Interpersonal communication is the verbal and nonverbal interaction between two or sometimes more than two interdependent people. Wow, what a way to begin this series of videos on the topic of interpersonal communication. The truth is that while this definition might sound stilted and stiff, our daily interaction with other people is dynamic, sometimes confusing, and ever-changing. No relationship stays the same. You must continually be examining your interpersonal relationships and the communication that takes place within those relationships. Welcome to Interpersonal Communication. The videos in this series are designed to make you think about past choices you've made in your relationships. They will ask you to define how you're getting along with others in the present. And the videos will challenge you to grow as you learn new information, theories, and ways to apply this to your life. None of us can change the past, but I hope to give you information to make better informed choices in the future. My goal is simple. By the time you are finished with these videos, I want you to have better interpersonal relationships with the people in your life. Knowledge should be transformative. One of the places to start when thinking about interpersonal communication is to ask the question, why study interpersonal communication? I might be able to suggest some answers to this question, but you want to stop and ask yourself this question. Ask yourself what you expect to get out of this study. At the end of this video, why don't you write down some personal goals that you have concerning your relationships? Is everything going just fine, or are there areas where you know you need to improve? Here is how I would personally answer this why question. For all of us, when we're young, we are extremely self-centered. Just think about babies and toddlers. The process of growing as a young person and a teenager is, or at least should be, a journey towards being less self-absorbed and more outward and other-focused. But it's easy to continue to focus internally, to focus on being right at all cost, and to focus on getting our way. At some point, we need to push pause and think about how we are doing in our relationships and our interpersonal communication. Hopefully, by viewing these videos, it will help you to do just that. Pause and think. Studying interpersonal communication should also begin by examining what interpersonal communication is, beyond the brief definition I shared at the beginning of the video. Let me suggest to you that you can begin to understand interpersonal communication by viewing it as being ever present in our lives, understanding that you can define it by examining what communication is, and you need to grasp that it is a challenge. First, interpersonal communication is everywhere in our lives. One debate in communication revolves around the question of whether you can be around other people and not communicate. Our interactions are filled with verbal messages of all kinds, but nonverbal messages actually comprise a larger part of our communication with the people around us. When you get home at night and you walk in the door, your spouse, partner, family, or roommate starts receiving messages from you. We have interpersonal communication with those we know, people we buy things from, people at college, and on our jobs. So we better start understanding what it is. Second, interpersonal communication is best understood in the context of understanding communication. The most basic definition of communication involves a sender and a receiver creating and sharing meaning. You should understand this and the more specific definitions of communication. But the essence is that communication means that you have to understand. You might think you are meaning something when you send a message, but unless you and the receiver spend the time to get on the same page, on the meaning of your message, communication fails. And so does the interpersonal communication. So we better start understanding what it is. Third, interpersonal communication is best understood as a challenge. The reality is that it doesn't just happen, and sometimes talking more just doesn't solve the problem either. It's actually pretty easy to mess up on. It is a challenge. Interpersonal communication is something that takes deliberate reflection, deliberate study, and deliberate effort. So we better start understanding what it is. Well, are you ready for the question? The question I began to ask earlier, is everything going just fine in your interpersonal relationships, or are there areas where you know you need to improve? I hope you get a lot out of this series of videos as you explore and learn. Remember, my goal is simple. By the time you finish these videos, I want you to have better interpersonal relationships with the people in your life. Knowledge should be transformative. See you in the next video.